Wow, what a way to start the new year. Thank you, American Hangman, for wasting my time. So, on the first week of January 2019, I was looking up other movies that I could possibly see, because we only got one major release, which was Escape Room. And since I didn't see it until Tuesday of the next week, I needed to fill the void with something else. There was 4 movies that I got my hands on that I could see and review, but there was one in particular out of those 4 that looked really damn awful. And so I thought, surely this will be the first movie I see this year, so I can start off bad. And boy, it was not even worth my time. It's probably not even worth my time reviewing the movie. But I saw it, so let's talk about it. American Hangman wants to be a slow-burning thriller. It wants to be smart, but it really isn't. Essentially, it stars Donald Sutherland, the only prominent actor in this movie, in my opinion. Actually, the only one I recognize in this movie. He plays a retired judge who is kidnapped, along with another person, by a madman. Now, why did this madman kidnap this judge, you might ask? Well, it's because the judge resided over a particular case. A case that tried a man for kidnapping and murdering a 14-year-old girl. Now, the madman believes that the person tried for the case was completely innocent, and that the wrong man was put to death. And the madman blames the judge for all of this, and wants to conduct a trial, trying to prove that the man put to death was innocent, and that the judge put the man to death purposefully? That's what this movie's about. Oh, and by the way, the madman is got them trapped in a basement while he's streaming the whole thing with cameras on the internet for everyone to see. That way, all the people watching it, which goes up to the thousands, tens of thousands maybe even hundreds of thousands, and these viewers get to be not only the judge during this case, but the jury. I think we've seen something like that before, where the viewers get to decide the fate of the person in the video. Yeah, I'm sure we've seen that before in something. Okay, now it's not a total loss of a movie. It's very hard for me to consider a movie to be so bad that there's nothing redeemable about it. Usually, I can find something redeemable in a movie, and American Hangman is no exception. The best thing this movie actually has going for it is the premise. Now, don't get me wrong, it sounds stupid, but it sounds entertaining, and if done in the right way, not only could it be entertaining, but it could be fairly smart and something unique and creative. This movie doesn't execute it well enough, and it's flat, boring, and executed poorly, and just in a dumb fashion. But again, the premise of this movie is entertaining, and I wish we got the movie that I thought of in my head as I'm thinking of the premise, but we didn't get that. I mean, can you imagine this madman actually performing his own trial for this judge, bringing in witnesses, bringing in evidence because he captured all of this beforehand? None of that actually happens in this movie. Instead, the mock trial, like they're calling it, I can't even call it a mock trial. It's not even close to resembling a trial. Mostly the madman talks philosophically about morals and justice and the justice system and the judge, and then they debate and talk, and then he doesn't really prove anything. He doesn't really present any evidence. He just points, the madman points at himself as evidence because there's a twist about who he is, which you probably could guess from just listening to the premise of the movie. And then in the end, everyone watching gets to vote whether the judge is innocent or not. That's pretty much all the movie is. So it doesn't even do the premise that I wanted or most people would want from this crazy, bizarre, creative premise. Another thing that I legitimately liked was the two lead performances. Donald Sutherland is a good actor. He's been around for a while. He's prominent. He's been in a lot of great roles. So, of course, he's good in the movie. Granted, he doesn't get much with this character, and I can't imagine this being a challenging role for him, but he's a solid actor, so automatically he's pretty good in the movie. The other person I thought was good was the actor playing the antagonist. Let me look up his name because, honestly, I don't think I've ever seen him in a movie before. I've only ever seen Donald Sutherland when it comes to all the people in this movie. I guess there was one cop, one of the detectives looked familiar, but I couldn't quite place him. But the main antagonist is played by Vincent Kartheiser. I'll put the name down below because I'm probably mispronouncing it. But honestly, he did a pretty good job. He does a good job at playing someone that's cold and calculative and someone who's very smart, and he's the kind of villain that knows everything. I mean, he's not completely omniscient, but he almost is, where he knows how everything is going to play out and he has everything planned accordingly. But he can still portray someone who's uneasy and someone who can lose his shit. We've seen plenty of villains that do this type of thing, but the actor Vincent, he did pretty well. Honestly, he did a lot better than the bad guy in Bad Samaritan. Yeah, everyone likes David Tennant. He played the bad guy in Bad Samaritan. And people praise his acting for that movie, even though it was a pretty bad movie and something that most people would look over. I think it was the worst thing in that movie. Not to say that David Tennant is a bad actor. He's a good actor, but he was just really bad in that movie. This guy did it better, surprisingly. I don't even know the guy. I haven't even seen him in any other movie. And the second half of the movie is entertaining. Most of it is entertainingly bad, but the second half of it is a little bit more entertaining than the first half. That's all I have to say about it when it comes to the good. There's plenty of bad that I can say about American Hangman, but the most disappointing thing, even though I wasn't really looking forward to this movie at all, but the most disappointing thing is failing to meet the premise that you pay for, or you go in for. When I saw the trailer, I'm like, okay, it's going to be this weird mock trial thing, and it's disappointing because it barely resembles even a mock trial. It's just people discussing and arguing and then having people vote on the outcome. I mean, I guess you could say in the most loosest and simplest terms that could be a trial. But again, it's like there's no evidence presented. There's no real arguments. It's more like arguing morality and the judicial system and how it's fucked, basically, which really isn't that much of an argument. Also, this movie gave me flashbacks to Peppermint, something that I hated last year. One of the things I hated about Peppermint, one of the little rants that I had about that film in my review, was that she kills the judge for doing his job, because they don't really portray the judge as evil. And it's just like he's doing his job, and given all the evidence and given everything that happens in the trial, it makes sense what the judge does. And then suddenly the next scene that we see the judge, she's nailing him to a chair, and we're supposed to root for her as she explodes him, basically. And then it's like scenes after that, you find out, oh, maybe he was corrupt because someone says something about maybe paying him off. So it's like you get that after she kills him, which, what? The reason why I was having flashbacks to Peppermint for this movie was because the madman blames the judge, which also makes no real sense, because it's not the judge that kills the person. Sure, he sentenced the person to death, but it's only going along the lines of what happens in court. I mean, technically, it's the jury that convicted him. Blame the jury. Or better yet, blame the lawyers or the cops for getting the wrong evidence and presenting the wrong evidence that would help the jury conclude to the wrong decision. Blame all of them. The judge is the least responsible person out of all of them. But again, this movie wants you to believe that the judge is all-powerful and is the final law, you know? But that's not really the case. At least in this movie, we're meant to root for the judge, unlike Peppermint. But even then, the movie sucks with this ending because of what happens and how, for some reason, despite not having any evidence and stuff, all the viewers that are watching this live stream must be just as bloodthirsty as the people were in the audience for Peppermint, where all of them were cheering for her to kill the judge, because that's what happens with the viewers, even though there's no real proof that the judge willingly killed this innocent person or willingly sent this person because they had prejudice against them. It's not really proven. This movie also really tries to be smart, and it really tries its damnedest, but it fails so miserably, especially with so many dumb things happening throughout, that you can't take any of the stuff that it's trying to be smart about seriously. Oh, by the way, I did forget to mention, I do like the dialogue when it comes to the two main characters. I don't know if it's just because the actors performed that dialogue better or what it was, but there's something about the dialogue between the two of them that I enjoyed. The dialogue for everyone else either is completely bland and just no personality to it, or it was just dumb.
The towel is for the blood.
It's not working. It's not going back.
The towel is for the blood.
This way it'll bind if I just hold it like this and give it enough time.
Ron, stop.
He cut off my finger.
Did you stop and get gas
The
first?
finger that I was born with. The finger I had for my whole life that my mother gave
It's
me.
the drive-through, one of those restaurants you can see from the highway.
And we're talking about fucking hamburgers?
We need to focus.
I also don't really like all of the different side plots to this movie. I mean, it's not really side plots, but it constantly cuts back to different people who are viewing the live stream. We get a hacker who really doesn't do much other than discovers the live stream first, I guess. Well, I guess she doesn't technically sees it first. We're the first one, she's the first one we see that sees it, but someone sent her a link, asking her if she thinks this is real. And then so she brings it up, and it's live stream, and she's thinking, oh, maybe it is real. And all she really does in this movie is watch the live stream and react. And also she's the first one to contact the police, which I guess is kind of important. And then she tries to stop the voting because she's hacking, which, by the way, There's a hacking battle in this movie, and it, I guess, is probably a little bit more realistic in terms of hacking battles, I guess, but it's the lamest thing to see on the screen. Then there's also the police, which is probably the side story or the people that make the most sense for this movie, because they're trying to determine where this is and trying to figure out to save the judge. So they're important to the plot. You can keep all that. But then there's also the crowd of normal people in a restaurant that are watching the live stream and reacting. And then you also have the news, which is every time it cut back to the news, it was the worst, in my opinion. And the person playing the newscaster, not only was the acting bad, but the character was absolutely the worst. It's the type of newscasting that villainizes people right away. And so she's like trying to villainize the judge and trying to get people to go against the judge as he's held captive in a basement by a madman.
Why did you float that crap about people questioning the judge? And all that shit about the verdict?
Caitlin, listen to me. The story will be forgotten tomorrow. But not who told it.
When it comes to all the technical aspects of the film, the directing, the cinematography, the editing, the score, it's all very bland, it's all very generic, it's all just very meh and bleh. It's just pretty damn awful. And granted, this was probably a cheaper movie, probably a straight-to-DVD movie. It probably got limited theater releases, but was mainly a digital on-demand movie. But in the end, it still looks pretty bad, even for those standards. Now, bear in mind, this movie definitely has an audience. If you're the type of person that likes the straight-to-DVD or on-demand type of movies because you want to look for, like, the diamond in the rough sort of thing, you want to find the hidden gem among that stuff, or you're just distrusting of mainstream movies, then they're the type of people that would go out and watch this movie. And if you see a lot of those kind of movies, this one you might feel is better than other movies like it. And then you might presume that maybe this movie is smart and got things to say. So in that specific niche audience, they might think this is one of the greatest things they've ever seen. And I don't blame you for feeling that way. Everyone has their own opinion, but in my experience, this is a pretty bad movie comparatively to all the other types of movies that I've seen. But it does have a premise, and if done in a different direction, this could have been entertaining, or it could have even been smart. But it doesn't go any of those routes. And so I'm going to give American Hangman 1.5 stars. The ending is also absolutely the worst. It's going to compete against some of the worst endings of this year, most likely. And this is only the first week of January. Or at least when I saw this movie, it was the first week of January. So, did you see American Hangman? Have you even heard about it? What'd you think about it? Go ahead and comment below. And if you liked this video and you want to see more, please subscribe and check out my movie reviews or countdowns of this year, of previous years, of whatever. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My